If you are watching this episode on YouTube, then head over to the Spotify link in the description to watch the full discussion. In this segment, we are going to be discussing Richard Linklater's latest film, Blue Moon, and we are joined by a very special guest. We are joined by, you may know him from the Film French podcast, his debut album, The Glass, or the Electric Days podcast, which he co-hosts with Ben's Movie Lens. It is George O'Matney.
Ben.
How are you?
Hello, Ben. Thank you for that introduction. The
No
glass
problem.
mentioned in December. Wow. Hi, I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. Like for a podcast I only discovered the existence of last week. I'm so glad that you've so swiftly, invited me on. I know, of course, I don't know if I should be the one to break the news,
Yeah,
but
you can go on.
Jack is not on this segment, unfortunately. He and I were not able to, come on for the same segment, even though I've been on multiple podcasts with Jack over on the FFP. But hopefully I can, come back on here sometime in the future and I'll receive the full load.
Yeah, of course,
So
definitely.
yeah.
Just
Looking
Jack
forward-
will be on for the other segments as well, just not on for Blue Moon.
Of
So
course.
we are going to be discussing Blue Moon, which is the second Richard Linklater film that has released this year. The first one was Nouvelle Vague, which is on Netflix in the US and Canada. It's coming out, I think, at the end of January in the UK and Ireland, so go and check that one out. However, we are not discussing Nouvelle Vague today. What are we discussing?
We're discussing Blue Moon, and I'm wearing blue for it.
Very nice. The reason I've got you on is because I know you love Richard Linklater, and I know this is one of your favorites. So, do you just want to talk a bit about your favorite Richard Linklater films?
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, because this is one of them. I would say there's not one Richard Linklater film I dislike, despite the opening episode of the Electric Days podcast featuring, Ben's Movie Lens and I hating on Hitman. But Richard Linklater is my favorite director. My top 5 would be Boyhood, Apollo 10.5, which came out 3 years ago, severely underrated. The Before trilogy, and now Blue Moon. I think I named 6 accidentally, but anyways.
That was fun.
So that's my top 6. Those are all sorry, I'm only mentioning those because those are like my all-timers, right? And I want to talk about Richard Linklater for a start, and maybe this is the way we can start this discussion, because I have always loved Richard Linklater ever since I got into his work. But in July or August, I binged all of PTA's filmography. And then when One Battle After Another came out, I was like, nah, this guy is my favorite director. And here's the thing. PTA is definitely my number 2, and it is valid. If someone told me that PTA was their favorite director, it was perfectly understandable. But PTA is definitely a director whose directing stands out. That he would be known for those bigger moments behind the camera. However, Richard Linklater, his movies are definitely the sum of their parts, I think, and that his love for cinema and his passion for the type of film that he's his claim to fame is, it wouldn't exist as much without him, I think. So it sounds like Blue Moon that bring it back to, this guy's probably my favorite Richard Linklater. My favorite Richard Linklater, because it's a Mickey 17 scenario.
Yeah.
No, and favorite director. And I just listened to a Q&A of Blue Moon from the New York Film Festival, and Robert Kaplow, the screenwriter, who has already worked with Richard Linklater, he said that Richard Linklater is the only director who'd make this script into a movie, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
And Ethan Hawke replied to that saying, Rick's the only guy who would have cast me. Okay? And that's kind of what I'm going for. That's what I'm trying to say with this whole sum of the parts thing. But yeah, what do you think of Richard Linklater?
He's one of my favorite directors. I haven't seen nearly enough as I probably should have done. I obviously grew up watching The School of Rock. I must have seen that movie well over 10 or 15 times just growing up, because I just love it. Jack Black in it is just it's an iconic role. It's an iconic film. for me. Funny enough, I actually watched it last year because we're doing the play for my school, and before we did it, the teacher said, "Do you want to put a film on?" And we were going from some promo, and let's put the School of Rock on. Just why not? I've also seen the Before trilogy, and Nouvelle Vague, and Blue Moon, and I think Boyhood. Yeah, that's the one that I've seen. I would say that, like, my thing with the Before trilogy, I can't really separate them because they're all just so incredible, and I need to rewatch them desperately. They're all just really incredible films.
That's why they sold the Criterion as one thing.
Oh yeah, 100%. I've been meaning to get that for the longest time, and every time I just walk right past it, or they don't have it in stock, and I definitely need to get it to rewatch it.
It's my favorite piece of physical media. I love it.
Very
so much.
Nice.
But yeah,
I have a question. Will you watch Nouvelle Vague when it comes out in cinemas?
I'll watch it before it comes out. I will watch it at the first available opportunity. I cannot wait for Nouvelle Vague. I know because
if you have a VPN, you can change it to American, watch it on Netflix.
Indeed, yes. But Nouvelle Vague, I'm interested by Nouvelle Vague. I don't think I'll like it as much because it's like, or maybe I will. Like I really don't know. But the only thing I can say about Nouvelle Vague, because God knows that I've spent too much airtime on podcasts talking about movies that I actually haven't seen. There's a quote from Nouvelle Vague that I know of because of a friend of mine's review. Someone says, I'm assuming Jean-Luc Godard says to one of the actors, "You're playing me."
Oh yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It's haven't you figured it out now? You're playing me.
Yeah.
That is the thing with Nouvelle Vague, in my opinion, is it's so funny, and I'm not going to get into spoilers and for the rest of the segment, right? But in the sense of like what I liked and which film I preferred, I know you know it, but what I mean is, I think that because I love Breathless so much, I think that that's one of my all-time favorite films. I think that because I love Breathless so much, it's elevated Nouvelle Vague because it is so funny, and it's like just watching the production of it unfold. I know it's obviously fictionalized. I don't know how much of it is true. I didn't imagine lots of it is, but just the way you're watching this unfold, I think that's just hilarious to watch.
Yeah, and I want to hear a lot from you about Nouvelle Vague because I think, like the Before trilogy, it is hard to separate these two films. That Rick has made this year. The existence of these two films is the only thing that lets me forgive him for making Hitman, because it's like the funding for that allowed him to make these two personal projects. And Nouvelle Vague is a movie for cinephiles, and Blue Moon is a film for theater kids. All the thing that kids these
one
days
for them,
say.
one for us.
Indeed. And I mean, that's the thing, because I wasn't expecting for the Theater Kid 1 to, end up as my favorite film of the year. But yeah, like Blue Moon and Nouvelle Vague both got into Best Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes. You can probably imagine how happy I was. But also, Ethan Hawke got in. Can we talk about Ethan Hawke? Like,
100%. That's one of the points I was going to bring up.
Okay, go ahead. What do you think about the... We'll start with Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, he's incredible. The transformation, because I didn't realize it was Ethan Hawke, because I knew going into it was Ethan Hawke, but then you do sort of get so immersed into it that you kind of forget that it's Ethan Hawke playing Lawrence Hart, which I just think is absolutely mental just to think. And then I went, hold on a minute, that's Ethan Hawke. Like, it just hit me then. It's like, I knew the whole time it was Ethan Hawke, but the way he's been transformed into Lawrence Hart, then I just keep forgetting.
Absolutely. And it's not really a voice change, he is just unrecognizable. But I think one of the many things I said on the night that I saw Blue Moon, because I was texting like a dozen of my friends about this, that Ethan Hawke is unrecognizable, but he is a voice to so many universal themes in the movie. And like, it is just unbelievable the performance he puts on, because it's like in the Before trilogy, you're like, okay, they clearly had a lot of rehearsals and it's like broken up into pieces, right? This is just one, basically a monologue in a bar, right? It is actually like unfathomable how he was able to go through this process and come out one piece in the other end, come out actually taller than he was during production. And it was another thing that he brought up in the Q&A. He said that when you're doing a longer run for a theater production, you don't even think about the lines. You don't even think about, the props being ready when you need them, or every other actor being in the right place. And that's when you get time to actually empathize with your character and really get enjoyment out of living through their eyes each night. And while I was watching Blue Moon, I looked at Ethan Hawke. I was like, "You're playing me here." It is actually, and I don't need to go too deep on a podcast, especially because I've sort of told you and Jack, but it's like crazy how much this script resonated with me, and more so than the Before trilogy, I think, because this this sort of, I suppose, unfortunate man in appearance, who is an artist and who has, been suffered unrequited love time and time again in his life. It was just hard not to connect to that. And Lauren's Hart, there's a touch of Salieri to him, I think. Have you seen Amadeus?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. I like the bitterness in him, and the way he interacts with Richard Rodgers is incredible. And there was a bit of like Mozart and Salieri in that duo, which I think could maybe bring us on to Andrew Scott, who won a Berlin Festival prize for this. What do you think of him in this?
He is very, very good. And I just wanted to sort of say, I just want to read out Jack's review of Blue Moon before we get any further.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So he said, Blue Moon is one of the 2 Richard Linklater films that released this year, and it was also really good. Ethan Hawke is becoming one of my favorite actors the more I watch of his movies, and this is no exception. He's amazing in this, and so was the rest of the cast. They all did a really good job, but Ethan Hawke is the standout performance. The set is amazing, and I love the old bar and paintings. The music is brilliant, and I loved every song. Everyone sang really good. Overall, 84 out of 100. I personally preferred Nouvelle Vague over Blue Moon. So he was basically told me to how much he loved the main 3, Margert, Qualley, Andrew Scott, and Ethan Hawke, and they are all incredible performances. They definitely do carry. I'm not saying carry because I think everyone's good, but they are definitely the 3 most important roles of the film. And Andrew Scott, the way he's able to play such a character, because he's playing someone that, how can I describe this? Like, he knows that working with Lawrence Hart long term might not be the greatest idea, although he wants to, because he respects him so much as a person, as an artist, but he just knows it might not be the best thing for his career. And I think the way that he plays that is just incredible.
Absolutely. And Richard Rodgers is such a complex character, and a performance is good where you start delving more into the character, because it's just like a spotless performance from Andrew Scott.
Yeah.
And like you said, there is that duality that you can see how much this anger and frustration that Richard Rodgers has built up from spending so much time struggling with dealing with Lauren's Hart as a person, just so he can work with the artist Lauren's Hart, and there's also the thing about I owe my professional life to you and everything, but I think a lot of the sort of philosophies and quotes and meditations that Lauren's Hart offers throughout this film, whether it's to the bartender or to what's it called, Elizabeth, played by Margert Qualley, they're all like connected to a certain person in his life, right? Whether we know them a lot or not. And I think the quote about in a relationship, one person loves and another person lets himself be loved. Whether I don't know whether or not that was before like the big staircase,
Yeah.
conversation between Hart and Rogers, but oh my god, if that's not, their relationship to a T,
Yeah.
it is fascinating. But yeah, shout out Bobby Cannavale as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
know the top
100%.
three is great, but he's also so crucial because until Elizabeth walks in, he's like the second main actor,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. He's like, and what I was thinking is the script, Robert Kaplow's script is just so good because it's times,
Mhm.
especially in the first 20, 30 minutes, it doesn't feel like dialogue. It just feels like them two talking, and it feels so natural and it flows really
Yeah.
well. And their on-screen chemistry is just incredible. And I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Did you know about Rogers and Hammerstein before you watched this, or was this a completely new set of characters to you?
So, good question. I knew the name
Yep.
because, like, I have Sound of Music on DVD, and at the top of the case it says Rogers and Hammerstein. And, like, yeah, I know some of their songs. I watched Highest to Lowest before I saw this, so I know the song "Oh What a Beautiful Morning."
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, and I think even if you don't know about them, you can still feel, and I think more people would maybe know about Oklahoma than the
Yeah.
dual Rogers and Hammerstein. So it is definitely that feeling like, oh, we're in 2025. 82 years ago was the start of this duo, and before that, like that night was, a key point. It was such a shift
Yeah.
in one person's life, and there's this incredible feeling throughout the film that he's getting left behind, slowly and slowly. And I guess this is where we should probably put out a spoiler
Yeah.
warning. But the tagline of the film is "Forgotten but not gone." Like, how do you even think of something like that? It was so incredible. And sorry, I'll pass it back to you again. But one thing
Yeah.
I want to say about the whole thing, him getting left behind, the final time that you see Elizabeth and Rogers in this film, and we haven't really just touched on Margaret Qualley properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the final time you see those two characters, they're linking arms, walking out of the bar, leaving Hart behind, and it's like Hart's like talking away and everything. Um, Elizabeth walks out with, as Hart promised her, a handful of dick, and she's like smiling at Lawrence.
Mm.
That's his future, right?
Yeah.
Well, at least for the next 7 months. Like, that's the closest thing to love that he would go on to feel.
Yeah.
Just not that way. But Rogers, his past, the last
Yeah.
quarter of a century, is looking at him with this like bemusement and almost disgust. And that's just an incredible piece of visual storytelling. However, and this connects to the quote that you see at the start of the film,
Yeah.
only the saddest of men could look at those two people and not feel hope.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, on that, cold night in New York, Hart didn't. And I really think we lost a great talent just because
Yeah.
of his mindset. But yeah, so
What
could
I
I
sort of,
ask?
oh,
Yeah, sorry,
sorry.
go.
What I sort of pictured is like, when you said about their linking arms and they're walking out of the bar, we've
Yeah.
only seen that bar for the whole film. So it does
Yes.
sort of feel like both of them are walking out of his life, because as
Yeah.
the audience, that's all we have seen in this one setting, apart from like the opening shot, but that's
Mhm.
like in the future. But this is the only thing of this sort of like interaction with these characters. It's what we've seen, so it is like they're walking out of his life, and we're seeing that on screen and happen in real time.
Absolutely. And I also think I was so happy that Ethan Hawke was returning for this
Yeah.
film, even when I didn't know, anything about it. And I love how it's like, their first collaboration in 11 years. is a movie about, friends breaking up and getting left behind. And there's a lot of people involved in this that are, longtime collaborators with Richard Linklater. I don't actually know who edited it, but Graham Reynolds, one of the best
Yeah.
scores of the year, by the way,
Yes,
composed
definitely.
this, and he also wrote the score for Before Midnight. And on that commentary on the Criterion, they were saying Before Sunrise and Sunset didn't really have music, but Before Midnight has this beautiful score going throughout. So yeah, it's understandable that they wanted him. And sorry, I think it's Peter F. Kelly. Oh, just double check that.
Shane F. Kelly, is it?
Thank you, Shane F. Kelly. Yeah, he cinematographed this film, and he's also, a frequent collaborator.
He has worked on Hitman, Boyhood, Everybody Wants Some, and Apollo 10, and many more films. So he's been a long time collaborator with Richard Linklater, and Ethan Hawke has as well. And I think I read somewhere that they've been wanting to make this film for so long, and every year Ethan Hawke would check in and be like, "You've got, we're ready to make this now." And he's like, wait a bit longer. And I think just the fact that they're able to trust that they're gonna, and I think their partnership is so strong that they're able to trust each other and do this film, and that I think it's important to have someone that he knows doing the role, and I think the fact that they were able to just decide that this was the right time to do it is just also incredible. The
patience of Richard Linklater is unbelievable. Like, obviously we've seen it from Boyhood, and now he's, I believe, almost 2 years into another long-term project with the Merrily We Roll Along production that's going over 17 years, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But like now, and I know it's, that whole funny story, and I do actually think it's hilarious how Richard Linklater waited because women still wanted to sleep with Ethan Hawke, and now they apparently don't, which is just untrue. And I also think the time that they spent waiting really is an undeniable factor of how great this script is. You think of Robert Kaplow and probably Linklater as well, like just touching up on that script and polishing it to such a fine degree that it's like, would you say it's one of his better written movies, regardless of what you think of the film overall?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's such a dialogue heavy film. And like I said earlier, the dialogue flows so well and it all feels natural. And I think that's just down to the screenwriting and the line deliveries from the actors and just everything, I think. And it just works. It does just work. And like when I was watching it for the first time, I asked you, do you know about Rodgers and Hammerstein? And everything in this was new to me. The only thing I know was Oklahoma was a musical. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew it was a musical. And I'd heard of It's a Beautiful Morning or Wonderful Morning. I'd heard that song before, and I only knew it because you mentioned it earlier. So like I wouldn't be able to pick out their songs. I wouldn't know that it's that the new set of characters and the way that they're able to introduce these characters and portray these characters, I think, is such an interesting way as someone who is not or doesn't know anything about these characters.
Absolutely. And I'd say it's the same thing, if someone was as into theater as you and I are into film, they might not know about Jean-Luc Godard, but that's the range of Linklater. But yeah, this dialogue is just insane, whether it's the smaller lines or bigger ideas, like the main idea of the first act, I think, because only one of the principal actors is in it. The main idea of the first act is like that everyone is the main character of their own play and everyone around them is an extra. However, it's, the roles are swapped in that. But unlike Casablanca, which is mentioned many times in the film, I cannot tell what my favorite line in this film is. Like a few examples: art will wait for you. No one is even loved half enough. I am drunk with beauty everywhere I go. Or artists are omnisexual. I was just like struck to the ground by each of these individual lines in a more effective way than like entire films that I've seen elsewhere this year. And that's just why this film is so impactful for me. Do you have a favorite scene in this movie?
I'd probably go with the ending scene where they take Margert, Qualley and Ethan Hawke in. I want to say it's a bathroom. Was it, sorry?
Courtroom. Courtroom.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. And he's basically obviously trying to get, he's trying to sort of, what's the word? Trying to pick up Margert Qualley, right? Because he's,
Sure.
he's been talking about it the whole film. And then it's like, she sees him more
Yeah.
as like a father figure or a mentor. And I just think that just sums up the whole movie in a way. Just nothing is really going right for him
Yeah.
in this. And it's just, he's such a talented person, but it's just he cannot do things right. Not do things right, but he just has, just not, things aren't going so well for him at the minute. And I just think that that's the epitome, and not epitome, but I think that's the climax of just that in that scene there.
Yeah. I think there's no other choice for favorite scene. And maybe it is just the best. Maybe that's the consensus, because like, oh my god. You think Hart is under control or in control the
Yeah.
entire film, right? And like, he's the one that asks for 2 minutes of privacy or 10, whatever, in the courtroom. But then at the end it feels like he's being confronted, you know?
Yeah.
It's so like shocking how seamlessly that shift is made, but also for the up until that point in the film, Hart is like this reckless ball of energy. Won't stop talking, won't stop flapping about or lighting cigars or asking for another shot. But now it's like this courtroom scene like destroys him.
Yeah.
And I know there's only like 2 scenes after he comes out, so you don't really get that effect, but it really like knocks him to the ground. And Ethan Hawke is as good in that scene as Margert Qualley.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about Margert Qualley?
Oh yes, definitely.
Oh my! You go ahead.
It's an incredible performance, and Jack wanted to mention all 3 of those lead performances, and especially Margert Qualley. I mean, she had so many movies come out recently in the last year. The Substance. I want to say she was in Honey Don't. I want to say, yeah, and I haven't seen that. And I want to. Well, and she's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think that was a breakout role. And this obviously, and she's just such an incredible actor, and just the way she's able to play this role in this movie is absolutely just incredible. And just she doesn't have much screen time in the first, I want to say like 40 minutes as I would have expected.
She's always running around.
Exactly, and she doesn't have as much screen time as I expected. And maybe when I watched it, I did think that the first 20 and 30 minutes were not slow, and but that is, I think, an area where I wasn't. I didn't like it as much as some of the other parts, and I'm not saying that it's bad because it was slow, but I think I was expecting it to have a lot. I didn't know what I was expecting because I don't read up on movies, so when I'm expecting, I was kind of like expecting Margert Qualley to be in a lot of thing, and then once I kind of realized that she wasn't going to be, then I think I started really enjoying that more. But I think on rewatching, I think especially now, I think with that opening scene with him in the bar and talking to the writer, I forgot his name. However, it's just, you can see that he's just so broken, and he's like, keep on drinking the alcohol, and he's just keep on drinking, and you just really, and I think not on rewatch, but I think every time I think about that now, it just keeps hitting that point, and I think it can only go up once I rewatch it, and once I realize that once I actually realized that,
do you expect many of your problems, I know they're only minor, but do you expect many of your problems to last on a rewatch?
No, I don't think so, but I think, again, I don't think that I'm not going to say my final rating, but I don't think that a lot of the, not problems I had, but I think the reason why I rated it what I was partly because of that, and I think that it will go up, but I don't think it will reach the heights of some other films, because I just don't think I can connect to it unbelievably well. Like, I know you can, but like, I think that's more of a personal thing than rather that the film was bad on a technical scale. I can still recognize it's fantastic.
Well, I was just thinking, and that's a great point that you've made, because what I was just about to say with Margert Qualley, and I rewatched some of the moments of the film before coming on here. When she utters her first line, the friendliness in her voice when she's talking to someone who describes her as irreplaceable, or like the possible love of his life, the friendliness that she returns, it's like the "not that way"
Yeah.
line. You can see it coming from
Oh
that
yeah.
point. You know, that her whole character arc, every line that she says is just building towards that thing, and it's the whole question of, you know, to Lorenz,
Mm.
Elizabeth is irreplaceable, but is Lorenz irreplaceable to
Yeah.
Elizabeth?
And I
I
think,
think,
oh,
yeah,
sorry.
sorry, continue.
And I think as well, the fact that she's off going and talking to all these other people that are in the bar,
Yeah.
I think that that just shows you the fact that, you know, he is replaceable. Whereas I
Yeah,
think that she's not
exactly.
there. And I think if she was irreplaceable, she would have sat with Ethan Hawke
Yeah.
for the whole film. And the rest out.
Where does he stay? You know,
Exactly.
while she's going around, where does he stay? And I think there is a subtle answer to that question when she's walking out with his partner of 25 years. You know, but she is so great, and she like controls Lawrence's craziness so well, so effectively. And yeah, Margaret Qualley gave my favorite supporting actress performance of last year in The Substance.
Yeah.
So I was hoping for her to be, you know, at that same level, despite being, I don't know,
Yeah, of course,
surrounded by more great performance, because obviously Demi Moore is fantastic, but like Ethan Hawke and Andrew Scott, that is tough competition, you know, if you're trying to act like Sam, and she is incredible. So,
and as well, and I know obviously there's been a lot of talk around Paul Dano and Tarantino in this last week, and a lot of the points you keep hearing is the fact that Paul Dano is able to put up and compare and be on the same wavelength as one of, if not probably the greatest actor of our generation, Daniel Day-Lewis, is incredible. And I think that Margaret Qualley is able to put up with and perform to the same standard as an Ethan Hawke or an Andrew Scott, and that just genuinely is just incredible acting, and it just shows her talent.
Yeah, very good point. So I think we went off a tangent on Margaret Qualley, and now I just don't know how to return to the main area of the film. I think it's perfect, and maybe if I feel that's the thing, that like all the films that I consider perfect, I'm like, maybe I'd like it less on rewatch, and now you know it's the same vice versa, and maybe for you that you'll like it more.
Yeah. I think as well, and this is one that Jack has pointed out, he said that the sets and the bar were just incredible, and I think it's such a great like place, and the fact that you see the theater and he leaves early, it's just like he's not fed up, but he's like, he is a bit not tired of it, but he is just, I think he's a bit annoyed and a bit frustrated that he's done it with Hammerstein and not, and he can understand that how great it is, and he's like, you know, if he feels a bit frustrated, it's like, that could have been me, you know, and it's like he knows that he's not coming to an end, but he knows that that's sort of the end of the road with him because of how great this was, and the fact that he just goes off and then you see the people filling in afterwards. I think it's just a great sort of representation of it.
Yeah, there's such a good use of set in this. Really would remind one how important production design is. You know, not just the whole like openness of it that you feel, you know, you connect straight from the lower ground with the bar and all the people gathered around reading the reviews. Then you have the staircase, and then up to the mysterious party that Lawrence is invited to. And there's also an exchange between E.B. White and the essayist and Lawrence, because he's sitting at a bar with a bartender who's an extra apparently, and suddenly another artist has appeared in the bar. Let me talk to him nonstop and give him all my attention for 10 minutes, you know. But a brief encounter with, you know, E.B. White might feel like perfect chemistry. But then, you know, 25 years down the road, they might hate each other. And you know what film alluded to that? You know?
Yeah.
This is Richard Linklater connecting, because I think this film is such a great meditation on art and love and relationships and legacy and creativity. And the Before trilogy is that in many ways. Like Jesse and Celine are both artists in their own respect, but it's just a much more mature stance. I think it's almost like I've joked for years like about a before 3 a.m. movie coming out. This is the closest we'll get, I think, despite the unfortunate lack of Julie Delpy. And I really think that after this, Julie Delpy should return to work with Linklater. But yeah, it's just the writing is on par, I think, with the Before trilogy in many ways. And one more thing I want to say about the story or the script is that the most tragic part, and there's a kind of biopic typical text on screen thing at the end of the film supplied with beautiful paintings or drawings of Harrison Rogers. Before I saw that text, I was thinking, this is such a tragic story because we know that Hart is going to go on to die in 7 months. It's very effective that the movie starts that way. But it's so tragic to think that there was still hope for Hart. You still had the Chicago revival numbers that Rogers wanted to write, and I was so happy to hear that he actually did go on to think. And then you have Elizabeth, who might not love him in the way that Hart loves her, but to quote a Shakespearean level line of dialogue that Elizabeth tells her in the coat room, I feel something deeper and wiser for you. Respect. Just so good. Such good writing. And it's that hope that is left for her that it really makes it more tragic. And it's the same thing that I said earlier, that he was the saddest man, that he was just such a sad character. It just that it just adds to the tragedy, I think.
Definitely. 100%. I agree with everything you said. And one of the final points I want to bring up is obviously Lawrence Hart. I think I read this somewhere, but I'd imagine from watching the film is he's a very short character. Just the fact that they were able to use a bunch of filming techniques just to make him look like tinier than everyone, smaller than everyone, especially the scene where Rogers is on the stairs and he's sort of like looking over him and he's like here like that with I think just the way they're able to film that and just the way they've done it and the way like go back to Ethan Hawke's transformed himself, just the way all of that's happened is just absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. And it's not, they didn't shrink Ethan Hawke just for the couple of quips that he alludes to his height in. It is for that whole, like you said, that whole tone of Margert Qualley towering over him, or Andrew Scott looking down at him, and him having to like sit up at a high stool at a bar, which is quite ironic because he was an infamous drunk. He like refers to a whiskey as the drink that made Lawrence Hart unemployable, and the fact that like him sitting at a bar stool is the closest thing that brings him to like average height. That's just incredible. And I think it's, and on my last annual Irishman rewatch, and I was talking to you about this because I finished it like just before we started watching Train Dreams together. Like The Irishman and Blue Moon, the real stories, such incredible and tragic in many ways stories, and it's even more impressive that like this sort of theatrical level or the cinematic level of insight into those stories was added by like the likes of Linklater and the likes of Scorsese. So yeah, a truly phenomenal film. And the very last thing I'll say is that this trilogy is well, it started 30 years ago, it finished over a decade ago, so this has like solidified itself as a classic, right? And anyone that gets this, I think 10 years down the road, and especially when Ethan Hawke and Richard Linklater make more movies, Blue Moon will be put in the same like cinematic hall of fame that Boyhood and the Before trilogy and Days of Confused sits in now, and it's only a matter of time, until that happens. And it's little stories that Richard Linklater waited for Ethan Hawke to no longer be sexy. Like it's those little stories that will keep it alive. And that's why I was so happy for it to receive 2 Golden Globe nominations, because this is a film that deserves the same legacy that the Before trilogy currently has.
Yeah.
That's all I have
So
to say.
what would you give your final rating to Blue Moon?
I would give Blue Moon a 10 out of 10 because I think it's perfect.
Very nice. I am going with 3.5 out of 5 for now.
Yes.
However,
For now.
I think, like you said, it's one that will be looked over in 10 years, and I think that it'll be incredible and regarded as a classic. So I can only see that improving with time, and especially after the conversation we've had today. Hopefully, Jack will be on the next segment where we will be discussing Chainsaw Man, the Reze arc, and it was just an accident, Jafar Panahi's new film. So thank you very much, George, for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Any last words you want to say? Anything you want to shout out?
Oh, shout out. I mean, I'm Irish Movie Guy on most of my socials. The Film Friends podcast, my aim with that podcast, with that first season, was that it was sort of timeless, that it wasn't like, oh, I don't know, on the Electro Disc pod, obviously there's like, oh, F1 came out ages ago, I don't care about that movie. Like, you will, if you've never listened to that podcast, that podcast covers movies from the 70s to like literal releases as new as Weapons. We really tried to cover a wide range of movies, and I'm so proud of the collaborative work that I got to do with so many friends, and hopefully you on season
hopefully.
So yeah, just if there's anything I can shout out, it's the Film Friends podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
And thank you so much, Ben,
No problem.
for having me on. And mostly, if I can recommend anything, it's to listen to future episodes of Ben and Jack's movie reviews.
Thank you.
And to subscribe to this Spotify, because from one podcaster to another, it's worth a listen.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say I listened to Film French podcast in school pretty much like all the time. Just been catching up on like all the ones that I haven't listened to, or just really listening to them because they're just very good, and like you said, they're timeless, so it's just easy listen.
I miss Monday mornings, promoting those episodes at Small Break. I remember like sitting in chemistry class watching it turn 10:30 and be like, oh, that's me. But it will return again soon. And when season 2 comes back in November 2026, it won't be like a year-long gap, like my friend Joe was telling me about the Blank Check podcast yesterday. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No, I haven't, no.
They've been running for 10 years.
Wow.
And I hope to do 10 years with the Film Friends podcast, but that won't take me 20 years to do.
Yeah.
All right, I can promise that. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And on to the next segment.